Good day, everyone. Good day to the internet. Good day to the universe. My name is Adani Edmond, also known as Ball Guy Visuals and Superboog. I'm just gonna go through some short things you should know if you are going to buy a DSLR, or you just received a DSLR, or maybe you might receive one in the near future as a gift. These are just some things that you should know to get you up and running as quickly as possible. All right, this is a very important question. What format should I save my pictures in? What format should I shoot my pictures in? I have a DSLR. Should I pick RAW or should I pick JPEG? So I usually go for RAW because it has better quality. The files are larger, but they also save more detail. It's also more customizable. Uh, if you're using a program like Adobe Lightroom, which you would need to process the RAW, then you can basically change almost anything about the picture in terms of the lighting, the coloring, the effects. And in JPEG, you just don't have as much customizability as in RAW. So JPEG does have its benefits though. It doesn't have as much customizability, but it is a much smaller file size. On average, if your RAW is about 24 megabytes, your JPEG will be 5 to 2 megabytes. It's also easier to share. If you're going to send the pictures over the internet as is, then you may want to go for JPEG because majority of computers on this planet will open a JPEG with no additional software needed, and that is not true for RAW. If you're at an event and you need to put the pictures as soon as they're taken, then JPEG would also be a good format to use. And this is just a funny picture I found. This is not my actual picture, but it just shows you kind of the detail, the lighting, and you can edit that raw to look even better than that. So what size should I take? This is basically the resolution or pixels that you should use on your camera. It depends on what you're shooting. It depends on the size of your card. Depends on quite a few things. I tend to just leave my camera, my Canon T5i, in its max setting, which is 18 megapixels. Just because I also shoot in RAW, and that's the only available RAW size, and it allows for better quality and better cropping and zooming. If I want, I can crop on certain areas of the picture and still not lose that quality, whereas if I had a smaller megapixel, then those things would become an issue. Although smaller megapixel pictures do have their benefits, just like the JPEGs, smaller file size, easier sharing, and if you're doing something like burst mode or using a slower computer, then you want smaller file sizes so the computer can process those things faster. And also in burst mode on your camera, when the buffer is filled, it would fill a lot slower if you had smaller file sizes as opposed to large file sizes. Just an example. It's not my picture. My example I found. You can see the 12 megapixel picture is doesn't have as much detail as the 24 megapixel picture. It's hard to make out the words, but on the 24 megapixel picture is clear. This is just an example of some zoom. On a smaller resolution picture, that zoom would be very, as you can see, is very cloudy, very unfocused. But on a larger resolution picture, you can still get zoom in and get that get a focus bit of that picture. So this is a rule that you should go in. This is a basic rule that all photographers should know. Of course, some rules are meant to be broken, but this is a good rule to start following, and then as you become better, you can leave that path and do as you please. It's one of the few rules, and basically it's an imaginary grid, if you will, on a picture, and how we as human beings look at the picture is we do not usually focus on the center spot. We usually go according to those guidelines And by putting objects and points of interest and focusing on those lines, then you will draw the viewer's attention to what you want to see as soon as they look at the picture. Many cameras have an actual grid option, so when you are taking pictures using the viewfinder or the LCD, you will see that grid. If you are taking pictures using the viewfinder, though, they will have usually they'll have viewfinder dots, focus dots, and those dots usually adhere to the grid. So as you can see, this grid, if you put something along those grid lines, or in a cross point, then that is basically the rule of thirds. Perfect example. Lenses, a huge factor in in camera, especially DSLRs. Believe Nikon and Canon each have at least 200 available lenses that you can purchase. They're varying. These lenses can usually be broken down into five major types. You have your wide angle, which is lenses that are less than 25 millimeter. Usually they start at 8, which is like a fisheye lens, and then they go up to ultra wide angle, which would be like 10 or 14 or 16, and then you go up to lesser wide angle, which will be up to 25, 24. And that's for taking a lot of a scene, a wide view of a scene. So if you a street, something large that you can take closer up, a tall building, stuff like that would be great for wide angle lens. Standard lenses. So we have standard lenses. That's usually your kit lens, the lens that comes with the camera. That's usually called the kit lens. Usually ranges from 18 or 17 to 55, or 18 to 145. Those most cameras come with lenses very similar to this, and it's just one of the cheaper lenses that you can get. And it's a all-purpose lens. Most people who get DSLRs will never take this lens off. It will be their main staple. But some people will venture and either get better versions of those lenses or get lenses more suited to what they want to do. Telephoto lenses, these are usually lenses 145 millimeters and greater. These are usually lenses used in filming or taking pictures of things that are very far away, sports, but you can't get very close to the action, but you need to get that proper shot. So sports, wildlife, also things like storms. But basically, you're a great distance away from the action, but you need to get that proper picture that looks like you're right there. Super zoom lenses are usually just multi-purpose lenses. They cross a very wide range of focal length. So basically, the minimum you can get to like a high focal length. And then we have macro lenses. They're usually fixed length. That means they can't zoom. But they're very good for taking pictures of things that are very small, or like a flower, an insect, and just making them look very big and very pretty. So focal length. All right. So usually the millimeter number on the lens that you get. So that's 18 to 55, 50 millimeter, 24 millimeter, 45 millimeter. The lower we talked about this. The lower the number means the wider the angle. The higher the number means the more distance that you get. Not necessarily a narrow angle, but it's just you can view further away. And if the number is fixed, that means it's like a prime lens or a macro lens, and that means that it cannot zoom. Usually those lenses can be cheaper, but it also means that you can't zoom. So to get a closer picture or further picture, you'd have to actually move. And these numbers can be affected by sensor types. If you have an APS-C sensor or a full frame sensor. If you have a full frame sensor, then the numbers will not be affected. But if you have an APS-C sensor or smaller, then the numbers can be affected. I need to do a little maths onto what exactly your focal length will be. Aperture. This is very important. This is one of the staples. So lower numbers is a higher aperture. It's better for low light. Creates a background blur effect that many people love, and it gives you a shallow depth of field, which creates that effect. That means that what you're focusing on will be very shallow. It will not take up the whole picture. Higher numbers, the camera actually goes up to f22, but I've never seen a lens that high. Usually lens stop at a 6.3 for the most, a little bit higher probably sometimes, and that gives you a lower aperture, so you have a larger depth of field. Everything in the picture will be in focus instead of that one object. And usually when your camera, if you have a zoom lens, at the max zoom it'll usually have that higher aperture. If it's a very expensive very good lens, it'll maintain that aperture throughout. So ISO is also very important. It's basically the sensitivity to light, how the sensor checks it. ISO 100 will basically give you good pictures in bright daylight, whereas 6400 or higher or in that range will give you better pictures at night. So a lower ISO usually means less noise, and a higher ISO usually means more noise, but that also depends on what kind of camera you have, what kind of lens you have, and the setting. Some pictures may generate more noise than others, but it's up to you to like see what your camera can actually do, and you just find a good balance. So you can see ISO 100 is not that well lit, whereas 800 or 320 would be like almost perfect. But then if you go up to 6400 and 2000, then it's way too much light on that picture for the setting, and it kind of loses its effect. So shutter is also very important. This is what many people use to get great pictures, great effects. It's basically the amount of time the camera sensor will remain open. A faster shutter equals less time, and a slower shutter equals more time. It's basically a faster shutter means that the camera spend less time taking the picture, whereas a slower shutter means the camera take more time processing that picture and then light into the lens. Fast would be something around 1/8,000th of a second or 1/4,000th of a second. It's usually what people use to capture fast objects like racing cars and planes, stuff like that, in motion, objects in motion while you are still. And a slow would be still objects. So if you're capturing like a nighttime scenery or a bird, or like something that's still, then you'd usually use a slower shutter speed. 30 seconds is usually the slowest, although there's a mode called bulb, which means that you keep the shutter as long as you want to, and then you would close it when you want to. And that's how some people get amazing like pictures of an entire night sky over the entire length of the night with the stars moving all about by just holding that bulb and keeping it open. It can greatly affect the image, and what shutter speed you need depends on the situation, and depends on the picture you're taking. I've been at events where I've had to change shutter speed 3 or 4 times just across like 4 or 5 pictures just to get the perfect picture. So you can see the difference between 1/15th and 1/1000th, and they usually go up in increments of 5 to 2. When they go up to 1 second, then it's 1, 2, 4, 6, and stuff like that. So a lot about photography is just practicing and trial and error. You will not get everything right away, but I mean, with enough practice and trying things and just reading up on stuff, then you will eventually get there. Nobody started off as a pro, and there have been people who have been doing this very long. They're still not very good, and there have been probably people who've been doing this like very short amount of time, and they're like legendary right now. So it's up to you to read and research, take as many pictures as possible, always carry your camera, try different things, and just take pictures of things you love, things you actually want to edit, want to take good pictures of. There's a few pictures I have taken myself. This is an example of a slow shutter. And just if you practice and if you try different things, you can get amazing effects. This is just the beginning. I'm gonna come back with some more tips and tricks and tutorials. We're gonna continue shooting, focusing, metering, flash, color balance, and much more. Stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel if you like this video, and keep shooting pictures. Pictures are very beautiful, and they're worth 1,000 words. Thank you.